Our story begins with a man whose followers never seem to last more than 24 hours. Originally, he was just an ordinary funeral livestreamer, but everything changed when he was bound to a system that reveals the mortality rate of others. Today, we see him stumble upon a room hosted by Yang. Yang is currently hyping up his audience, promising to challenge a 55-story rooftop while riding a hoverboard. A perfectly safe idea, naturally. The system activates its scan, targeting the user known as Extreme Yang and searching for any immediate danger signals. After 28 high-altitude stunts without any safety gear, the system calculates that the probability of a fatal accident on his next attempt is exactly 100%. The system identifies him as a precision client and suggests that it might soon be time to find a new owner for his soul. Our protagonist decides to leave a comment. "Hello, this is Peace by Sure Shop. We offer professional body restoration and full-service funeral arrangements." He even adds that a pre-booked reservation comes with a 50% discount, noting again that the danger probability is at its absolute maximum. He tells himself that if Yang simply stops now, the danger might pass. Regardless, he feels he should at least offer a warning. He types out a message, suggesting that the brother change his creative direction. After all, life is far too precious to waste. He warns him that if he continues, the chances of something going terribly wrong during the next stunt are incredibly high. Meanwhile, in the high-stakes world of the livestream, Yang's assistant excitedly announces that they have finally broken the 100,000 viewer mark. The fans are ecstatic, congratulating Yang on becoming a major influencer. In Jiangbei, it seems, Yang is truly the man of the hour. At this rate, they believe that reaching 1 million followers is only a matter of time. To be honest, they might be getting ahead of themselves. But Yang thinks 1 million is too small a goal. He believes he should have at least 5 million followers by now. No, he corrects himself. He wants 10 million followers. He wants to be the absolute best. He declares his ambition to become the #1 extreme parkour athlete on the entire internet, which, given the circumstances, is a bold claim. He turns to his assistant, Shigo, asking how the comments are looking today. The engagement is through the roof. Shigo reports that things are looking good, though they've attracted one particular idiot. He was just about to ask Yang how to handle it. The comment has already gathered quite a few likes. Yang tells him to delete it immediately, dismissing the warning as small-minded nonsense. Yang suggests that for a comment like this, they should actually pin it to the very top for everyone to see. His assistant agrees, noting that using such a contrast for engagement shows just how brilliant Yang's strategy really is. He tells the audience that they should all take notes on how a true professional like Yang handles the spotlight. After all, in the world of viral content, one must always be on the lookout for the next explosive hook. Yang then turns to Shigo, remembering that the assistant's father works as a security guard at the Tianping building. He tells Shigo that he needs a small favor regarding access to that specific location. He confirms again that the father is indeed the guard there, already planning his next move. The plan is simple: get the keys from his father so they can head to the rooftop for the shoot. We return to our protagonist at 2 in the afternoon, who opens his phone just hoping to browse a few videos. Suddenly, he realizes his notifications have exploded, showing over 99 unread messages. It turns out that Extreme Yang has actually sent him a direct message in response to his warning. He sighs, telling himself that good advice rarely reaches those determined to ignore it. Some people simply cannot be saved. Back on the livestream, Yang asks his fans if they know why no one else on the internet dares to challenge him. He claims it is because he simply doesn't answer to the laws of gravity. A bold statement, to be sure. We see them now at the Tianping building, where Yang prepares to give his followers the ultimate high-altitude performance. Without hesitation, Yang performs several backflips right along the edge before switching to his skateboard for more stunts. He even brings out a bicycle, riding it along the narrowest ledge of the skyscraper. There are absolutely no safety measures in place. Deep down, the viewers are starting to feel that something truly terrible might happen. The crowd watches in terror as Yang pops a wheelie, lifting the front of the bike high into the air. With only the rear while touching the ground, the sight is enough to make anyone's skin crawl. Suddenly, a security guard appears, demanding to know who they are and how they got up there, as gatherings are strictly forbidden. Yang simply brushes him off, casually explaining that they are just in the middle of filming a video. The guard is far from amused, shouting that the rooftop is no place for stunts and that a single fall would be fatal. He orders them to leave immediately, and Yang quickly agrees, telling the guard they are on their way out. Turning back to his camera, Yang tells his viewers that he is truly sorry, as today's livestream has hit a bit of a snag. But then his tone shifts, leaving is actually the last thing on his mind. He taunts the guards, daring them to try and catch him. He tells his fans that this accident is actually the perfect setup for what comes next. Yang decides to add a high-altitude chase to the show, thinking the guards will make for a brilliant gimmick to boost engagement. He is certain that being chased on the edge will make his likes and follower count skyrocket. To be honest, his confidence is bordering on madness. He gestures for the guards to come closer, leading them toward the very edge of the skyscraper. We see him step onto an architectural extension of the building, which looks like nothing more than thin lines on a chessboard. It is a hollow structure jutting out into the empty air, a place where the guards wouldn't dare to set foot. As they watch him leap back and forth over the abyss, the guards' eyes twitch in pure terror. But Yang isn't finished playing yet. He jumps directly onto another section, a decorative ledge with a patterned surface that offers very little grip. And then, in a split second, his hand slips. We see the selfie stick begin to tumble toward the ground far below. The scene cuts away, and a little later, a news broadcast begins to play across the screens of the city. The report confirms that a tragic falling accident has occurred at the Tianping building. It resulted in one person dying instantly at the scene. And then, a message appears for the fans. A family member of Yang takes over the account, speaking to the followers with a heavy heart. They confirm the grim reality. At 6 o'clock this evening, Yang fell from the Tianping building. The show, it seems, is finally over. And just like that, the account fell silent, never to be updated again. We find our protagonist at the end of a long day, finally collapsing onto his sofa to browse through some videos. He realizes he has logged into the wrong account, a small mistake, or so it seems. The Peace Funeral Parlor account. Yes, that was definitely the one. Just as he is wondering how he ended up there, his assistant calls him, sounding rather urgent. She tells him that the streamer known as Brother Yang has indeed fallen, but the accident happened in Jiangbei City. That presents a bit of a problem, as Jiangbei is all the way in the neighboring province. Even the high-speed train takes 4 hours, and for certain reasons, he is restricted to staying within his own city. He tells himself that his previous comment was mostly due to the system's influence, so they won't be taking this job. By now, his pinned comment has gathered 500,000 likes and 30,000 replies. Brother Yang's follower count has surged to 200,000, but since the man is gone, that hardly matters now. He simply wanted to warn people to respect life, but then, a system notification flickers before his eyes. It asks if he will take the funeral task for Yang, but he decides it is simply too far away. The system notes there is no reward yet for this high-risk task, and so, we move forward to 9 o'clock the next morning. After a night of going viral, his own account has exploded, reaching a staggering 150,000 followers. The system begins scanning again, landing on a user named Miao Xiaofei, detecting a faint danger signal. After over 100 provocative dance videos, her death probability is only 1%, a familiar but low-risk profile. Next, the scan moves to Outdoor Ahong, where the danger signals are significantly more pronounced. With 18 night survival stunts under his belt, his death probability sits at 10%, marking him as a potential client. Finally, the system scans the Beauty Sisters, noting 16 instances of them filming in highly dangerous locations. The system calculates an 80% probability of death during their next photoshoot, a very familiar client profile indeed. With such a high-risk warning, the system suggests he follow them immediately. 80% is, after all, quite high. The sisters, meanwhile, are less than pleased, wondering why they've been targeted by such bad luck. Yin Yin asks her partner, Cici, if she has any idea what is going on with this strange notification. It turns out they have been followed by an account with the rather ominous name of Peace Funeral Parlor. Curious, Cici decides to take a look at this funeral parlor for herself. She notes that the person behind the account is a man, wondering what his business could possibly be with them. She admits he looks decent enough, assuming he probably just thinks their photos are beautiful. Our protagonist, however, leaves a comment reminding them that life is precious and they should avoid dangerous locations. He adds that Peace Funeral Parlor is at their service, offering a 50% discount for those who book in advance. Seeing how young they are, he tells himself it's worth a try to offer a word of caution. He urges them to choose safer places for their photos and to stop venturing into such peril. He tells them to remember this well. He wants to save them if he can, but the sisters simply think this man must be out of his mind. It's one thing to follow them, but they are outraged that he is advertising his services right in their comment section. The video in question shows them posing on the edge of a cliff, and it has already garnered 50,000 likes. With over 1,000 comments rolling in, they find his behavior disgusting and decide it's time to fire back. But then Cici stops Yin Yin, noticing that the man has also sent them a private message. She scoffs at his warning, wondering who he thinks he is, some kind of street-side fortune teller? Yin Yin wants to delete the comment immediately, but Cici has a different, perhaps more opportunistic, idea. She suggests that they could actually use this morbid comment to fuel a short, dramatic livestream for their fans. Her plan is simple. Let the men fight amongst themselves while they sit back and reap the rewards of their protective instincts. Yin Yin is momentarily stunned, realizing exactly what Qian is trying to pull off here. She types out a reply, politely thanking him for the warning and promising they won't do it again, a classic move. She also gently asks him not to post advertisements in their comment section anymore. She adds that they believe neither they nor their fans will ever need his services, maintaining a facade of pure innocence. This clever tactic of playing the understanding victim immediately wins over the hearts of many netizens. A wave of supportive comments floods in, mostly insulting our protagonist, just as the sisters decide to start their live stream. The duo begins broadcasting, specifically highlighting the private message he sent them earlier. Men and women alike join in to condemn the message, which was, to be honest, quite an unexpected reaction. The viewers are outraged that someone from the Peace Funeral Parlor would dare to advertise in such a place. They continue to play up how much this Peace Funeral Parlor account has been bothering them. One fan claims the man is clearly just trying to hit on them. An interesting interpretation of a funeral advertisement, certainly. Qian thanks her brothers and sisters in the chat for the warning, acting as though she were completely oblivious. One viewer notes he is only an hour's drive away and offers to go investigate this man personally. Another fan, worried that Yin and Qian were frightened, immediately sends a virtual rocket as a gift. We see how effective this display of vulnerability is, working its charm on every segment of their audience. Suddenly, gifts are flying everywhere across the screen, with top-tier fans even dropping expensive rockets. Qian beams at the camera, thanking a user named A Gust of Wind MC for his generous rocket donation. She follows up by thanking Jiang and Sik for another rocket, the digital tips piling up quickly. The fans then suggest that Yin and Qian should bait the man further to see what his true intentions are. The fans are practically chanting for it now. Bait him, they say, and expose this absolute creep for who he really is. They want his true, ugly face revealed to the world. Shall we give it a try then? Qian asks her audience. Qian and Yin share a knowing look, though on the surface, they maintain a facade of being quite troubled by the idea. In reality, they are more than eager to test this peace funeral parlor character and see what makes him tick. They've already decided he's likely just another pathetic man, no different from the rest of their obsessed followers. To them, he is the perfect tool to trigger a massive spike in traffic. A little more investment, and the numbers will soar. With a bit of luck, they might even hit the trending searches and become overnight sensations, which is the goal, after all. We have to admit, the harvest from today's live stream has already exceeded their wildest expectations. They plan to ride this wave of attention all the way to the top, aiming for that elusive million-follower milestone. Qian sends a message, thanks for the warning. Hey handsome, do you have WeChat? Our protagonist is naturally skeptical, asking for my WeChat. Do you want to book a funeral? Why else would you want it? She plays it cool, replying that since he seems so capable, she just wanted to add him and ask a few more questions. He remains focused on business, asking once more if she is actually looking to make a funeral reservation. He even offers a 50% discount for early bookings, which, naturally, is not the answer she was looking for. She replies that she just can't wrap her head around why a handsome guy like him would advertise in their comments. She reiterates that they are far too young to ever have a use for such grim services. And of course, she adds that she is certain none of her fans will ever need him either. The chat erupts in anger, calling him a creep and asking who he thinks he's cursing with his talk of funeral bookings. One fan jokingly suggests she should just ask which mountain gate or sect this mysterious fellow Taoist practices at. The protagonist doesn't miss a beat, telling them where he practices and offering a 70% discount if they book now. He explains that because they are so young, he's offering a word of advice. They really shouldn't take photos in dangerous places, as accidents happen easily. As for whether they believe him or not, that's entirely up to them. After all, good advice can't save those who are determined to meet their end. Mercy cannot save those who refuse to be helped. Yet the fans are convinced this master must have some ulterior motive for his warnings. They taunt him, asking why he's gone silent, and wondering if he finally realized they are currently live streaming to thousands. The fans are certain he's seen the comments by now, mockingly asking this fellow Taoist where exactly he practices his spiritual arts. They assume he's realized they are onto him, and honestly, the joke is starting to wear thin for the audience. They conclude he must be too scared to reply now, and decide it's time to simply move on from the whole ordeal. Qian suggests that next time they encounter such a creepy man playing at being a mystic, they should just block him immediately. Turning her attention back to the stream, she asks Yin where they are headed today to take their latest round of photos. We see them prepare for their next stunt, as they announce they've chosen a very specific location for this shoot. It is a place, they claim, that almost everyone has visited at least once in their lives. They've spent a long time scouting this perfect spot, but as they speak, our protagonist's brow furrows slightly. A system notification flashes before him. The mortality rate for their next photo shoot is a staggering 80%. He immediately follows their account, noting the high-risk customer attribute and that grim 80% probability of death. It seems his warnings have fallen on deaf ears, and he tells himself there is nothing more he can do for now. Perhaps that 20% chance of survival will favor them, but his thoughts are interrupted when an employee calls out to him. A customer has arrived at the parlor, looking to arrange a particularly grand and solemn funeral service. He promises to be there in a moment, while elsewhere, Yin tells Qian it's time to get ready for their shoot. They are convinced that today's photos will be a massive hit, garnering more likes than they've ever seen before. By midday, they finally arrive at the location, a stretch of railway tracks, which, naturally, is the worst possible place for a photo session. They prepare to take a series of beautiful photos right here, and Qian urges Yin to hurry as a train approaches. It's quite a coincidence, they think, to actually encounter a moving train right in the middle of their photo shoot. Qian asks her friend if she doesn't think the sight of a train rushing past has a certain charm. She believes it possesses a unique, aesthetic rhythm that will look perfect on camera. Yin is wearing a traditional chi pao today, and seeing the train coming, she is suddenly filled with excitement. Qian agrees to the plan, but warns her friend that she really needs to keep a safe distance. As the train thunders toward them, Yin imagines how her dress will look in a video like this. She tells herself that in post-production, they can make it look like she's traveling through time. She is absolutely certain that the final effect will be stunning, which, in hindsight, was a tragic miscalculation. She asks if Qian is ready, announcing that she's about to start her performance. And so, we see Yin begin to walk directly toward the oncoming train. Behind her, their photographer, Cici, raises the camera to capture Yin in her elegant qipao. She looks back and smiles for the lens, completely ignoring the massive train while standing barely 30 centimeters from the tracks. Imagine the scene. A terrifying gust of wind precedes the massive engine, and in that split second, everything goes wrong. The smiling face in the viewfinder suddenly blurs into a horrific shadow, vanishing before she can even let out a scream. Cici collapses onto the ground, paralyzed by the sheer shock of what she just witnessed. Good heavens, once the train finally passes, the silence that follows is deafening. Cici immediately scrambles up and rushes toward the direction where Yin was thrown by the impact. The moment she sees her friend, her skin crawls and a cold shock like electricity surges through her entire body. Her stomach turns in knots, and half an hour later, the ambulance and police finally arrive at the grim scene. Yin was tragically declared dead at the scene, while Cici was lifted into the ambulance in a state of total collapse. Her mind had suffered a severe trauma from the shock. Meanwhile, at 2 in the afternoon, our protagonist had just finished a business meeting. Upon returning to the shop, he opened a video app, only to find a flood of people arriving because of a dark premonition. The comments were frantic, asking what the Yama's curse actually meant and urging others to check the creator's homepage. It seemed the last streamer she followed had already met a grim end. People worried that these two beautiful girls were next. They wondered if the curse was truly coming to pass, noting with growing dread that their videos hadn't been updated. Fans were pleading for Yin and Cici to say something, anything, but by 2:30 that afternoon, there was only silence. Their profiles remained frozen. He glanced at a previous comment he had left. The likes had already surged to a staggering 100,000. We then see the evening news, where the anchor announces a tragic accident that occurred in the city earlier that day. 2 young women had trespassed onto the railway tracks to take photos and were accidentally struck by a passing train. The impact resulted in one immediate fatality, a young woman who was only 23 years old. The other was left in a precarious mental state. Soon, major media outlets began sharing the story, and it spread like wildfire. Within a short time, the tragedy had climbed directly to the top of the trending charts. People began to whisper about the white food shop, wondering if it really was as cursed as the rumors suggested. The details were quickly confirmed. It was indeed Yin and her companion. One was 23, the other 24. Fans were in denial, desperately hoping the news wasn't true. But the time, location, and descriptions matched perfectly. In the sisters' fan group, a sense of panic began to take hold. The group experienced a shock unlike anything since its creation. By 7 o'clock that evening, the atmosphere had turned somber. Inside a ward at the Hunan City Hospital, we see a pair of bloodshot eyes, heavy with tears, staring at a phone. A pale, trembling hand reached out toward the screen and slowly pressed the confirmation button. The words, "account deleted," appeared on the screen. Qian, the survivor of that day's tragedy, had just erased their shared digital life. She couldn't bear to keep the account they had worked so hard on. Seeing her friend's face only made her spiral. Every image forced her to relive those horrific moments by the railway tracks. Qian, my God, I finally got through. Do you have any idea what's happening? The internet is exploding right now. Where's Yin? Why isn't she answering? Please, tell everyone what's going on. The caller was desperate, searching for any sign of life on their social media profiles. Hello, this is Qian's mother. While they were taking photos today, there was an accident. We only just managed to get her phone to work. It was true. The news report from earlier that day was indeed about Yin and Qian. The accident had claimed Yin's life instantly at the scene. Qian, meanwhile, had suffered a severe mental breakdown from the trauma. In her grief, she had personally deleted their video account, erasing their presence from the platform. A notice followed. The fan group would no longer accept new members starting today. Current members were free to leave. At that moment, Qian lay alone in her hospital bed. Her mind was flooded with memories of her best friend while she was still alive. She also couldn't stop thinking about those funeral-themed comments. Life is precious. One should never take photos in dangerous places. Believe it or not, the fragments of memory continued to swirl. She desperately wished this was all just a nightmare. Unfortunately, the cold hospital bed pulled her back to a harsh reality as the death was officially confirmed. As the news spread, many netizens looked back at our protagonist's original comment, feeling a chill run down their spines. They wondered if this man's words were cursed, or if his foresight was simply terrifyingly accurate. The online chatter grew louder, with users noting that every account he followed seemed to vanish. Then, someone remembered something important. Wasn't there a guy earlier, right there in Chunjiang City, who was making quite a scene? He had been planning to rush over to the Peace Funeral Shop for a friendly chat with our protagonist. But suddenly, he had gone silent. At that very moment, inside a taxi in Chunjiang City, he was anything but quiet. Go, go, go. Get me to the train station as fast as you can, he urged the driver. The driver, confused, pointed out they had arrived at the Peace funeral shop. What funeral shop? The man snapped back. Don't you dare mention those words to me right now. He demanded to be taken to the station immediately, despite having insisted earlier that he was a man of his word. Even though they were right at the doorstep, he refused to look. Just get to the station, quickly. He felt that if he didn't leave now, it would be too late. You see, just moments ago, he had checked the news. He saw that the influencer Extreme Young was followed in the morning and gone by evening. It was a pattern. And now, these girls were followed in the morning and met their end by noon. A terrifying efficiency, to be honest. Terrified, he deleted his account on the spot and prepared to flee. The next morning, at 9 o'clock, we see that our protagonist's follower count had reached 550,000. It seemed Lady Luck had truly abandoned those girls. He had initially hoped that the 20% chance of survival would be enough for them to pull through. But fate had other plans. A system notification appeared. Host followed beauty duo. ID Chung Yen Yen is deceased. The system asked if he wished to handle the funeral. The journey to the morgue would be over 2,000 kilometers. That's a 25-hour drive across 5 different provinces. A bit much for a single job, wouldn't you say? It was even more extreme than the last case. He wondered how he could possibly take this on, eventually deciding to pass. However, the system then revealed that once he followed 5 precision customers, a special reward would be unlocked. As it turned out, once he followed 5 of these precision customers, a special reward would be automatically unlocked. And so he returned to scrolling through videos, eventually scanning a creator with the ID, Hiking Lily. The system flagged a danger signal for 26 days later, walking along the highway. Her risk of a fatal accident was 100%. She was a perfect match for a precision customer, and the system urged him to follow her immediately. He followed her and left a familiar message. Hello, this is Peace Funeral Shop. Please do not engage in dangerous activities. Referring to her extreme hiking and sky burial live streams. If needed, our shop offers 24-hour service. He even added that a pre-booked reservation comes with a 50% discount, noting her 26 dangerous roadside behaviors. With a 100% probability of an accident, he figured he should at least try to warn her. The comments section exploded instantly. Holy crap, it's the Peace Funeral Shop, one user shouted. Another chimed in. It's the legendary assistant to the King of Hell. Buddy, what are you doing here? The chat began to panic, wondering if this meant the streamer was about to meet her end. They couldn't believe it. How could someone like her be the next target? The fear was palpable as they asked if she was truly done for, all because of a single follow. However, some fans tried to stay calm, arguing that even a funeral director can have hobbies and watch videos. They defended her, saying while others faked their hikes, Lily was the real deal, truly trekking toward the sky burial sites. Lily herself was thrilled to see thousands of people watching her stream today, and she prepared to set off. To her, it felt like a beautiful day. Usually, she only had a few hundred viewers tuning in. Seeing the count hit 4 digits was a dream come true. She began to wonder if she could ever reach 10,000 viewers. She questioned if she would ever reach such heights in her lifetime, a question with a rather grim answer, to be honest. At that moment, we see him notice the small pink trailer she was pulling behind her, resembling a tiny caravan. She lived, ate, and slept inside that small trailer, though it wasn't a typical caravan pulled by a vehicle. Instead, she relied on pure human power to pull it, and that was when the system issued a sudden warning. The probability of a fatal accident involving that trailer had hit 100%. This was not good. But things moved far too quickly. Before a warning could even be sent, a piercing scream erupted from the screen. The chat went wild, with viewers shouting in panic. What happened? Someone call an ambulance. Hurry. It seemed something had truly gone wrong, and they desperately asked if anyone nearby could go and help her. Saving her was the only priority now. The screen had gone black, but the sounds of the struggle remained audible. Those were the sounds of agonizing cries, and since this was a live broadcast, the news reached the trending charts instantly. As the incident gained momentum, the number of viewers in the live stream began to skyrocket from the initial 1,000. It jumped to 10,000, then 100,000, finally reaching a staggering 1 million viewers. This was a number Hiking Lily had never even dared to dream of, just as the live stream finally cut to black. Soon, we see the latest updates regarding the incident with the influencer Lily on her trek to the sky burial sites. According to statements from the personnel involved in the emergency response, the police and rescue teams had already arrived at the scene of the accident. They found a woman crushed beneath the vehicle. Unfortunately, she showed no signs of life. She was gone. That made 3 victims in a row, which felt far too eerie to be a mere coincidence. The viewers began to notice a pattern. The first person he followed didn't meet their end until that evening. The second person died at noon, but this third person met her fate only minutes after being followed. Following that logic, they worried the next person the assistant to the King of Hell followed would die instantly. It was a complete miscalculation. He had assumed there were still 26 days before a car accident would occur. He had even reminded her to stay safe while walking along the highway. Yet who could have predicted this? The accident actually occurred within her own custom-made trailer, a tragic end for Sister Han. Back at the office, the company account had gone viral, truly viral, with followers surpassing 700,000. At that moment, the trending charts were filled with people discussing him, calling him an omen of bad luck. They advised everyone to stay low and avoid his attention, the attention of the Pinyin funeral shop. One user noted the shop was right across from their neighborhood, adding that the boss was actually quite handsome. Could it really be that supernatural? One death is an accident, and perhaps even two could be a coincidence. But three? To call that an accident felt far too forced, even for Awei and Sister Han. The staff wondered if they might break 1 million followers today, though it seemed unlikely. They estimated it would peak at around 900,000, which, to be fair, is still incredible. We should remember that only 3 days ago, the company account had fewer than 1,000 followers. This was likely the fastest growth any account had ever seen on the entire internet. The boss's account was gaining momentum at a divine speed while he sat in his office sipping tea. A little later, he scrolled through some videos and came across an influencer from a neighboring country. She was live streaming a cooking session. Her ID was Sawadika Little Chef. Due to long-term exhaustion from overworking her live streams, her vital signs were dangerously low. The probability of a dangerous incident was 100%. She was in the highest risk category. The system urged him to follow her quickly, and seeing her dark circles, he left another polite comment. He told her to take care of her health, and the Sawadika influencer smiled as she continued stir-frying. But in the very next second, her expression went blank, and her entire body suddenly lost all support. She leaned forward as all the fans watching the live stream witnessed the collapse. It couldn't be happening again, could it? Another one was gone. At this point, he wasn't just an assistant to the god of death. He was the god of death himself. Underneath his polite comment about taking care of her health, countless netizens began to lose their minds in the comments. Another one had fallen, first Awei, then Sister Han. It was becoming a pattern that was hard to ignore. The staff wondered how they could have worked there so long without realizing their boss was such a unique individual. To be honest, he looked perfectly normal to them, but clearly, there was something hidden beneath the surface. Who could have guessed he was hiding the identity of a literal reaper? Sister Han certainly didn't see it coming. They noticed how remarkably young the boss looked, with skin that seemed far too perfect for his profession. The theories started flying. Could the boss actually be some kind of supernatural entity or a ghost? Perhaps he was the type of being that had lived for thousands of years, never aging a single day. Maybe his only goal was to put people at ease, though we know the reality is far more complicated. They whispered that he was a very special person, perhaps even waiting for a lost love to return. The conversation grew more imaginative as they speculated about his mysterious past and his true nature. It was the kind of story one usually finds in a legend, not in a local funeral shop. They imagined him waiting for a reincarnation until he suddenly walked in and asked what they were discussing. They jumped, stammering that it was nothing important, certainly not a discussion about him being a god. They quickly changed the subject, mentioning that the account had finally surpassed 1 million followers, a cause for celebration. He told them they could leave work early, reminding them to be careful on their way home. The three of them froze as if he had just mentioned a forbidden taboo, insisting there was no need for caution. They claimed that as young people, they didn't need to worry about their health, which, in this shop, was a very bold statement. They knew all too well that the last person the boss told to watch their health dropped dead a second later. It wasn't exactly a comforting thought. He clarified that he was simply telling them to go home and rest, as he was preparing to film a new video. He reminded them that they all had their own tasks to complete for the production. The staff quickly agreed to head out, promising the boss they would be back on time the next morning. They couldn't help but wonder what kind of video they would be filming today. One of them asked if it was another promotion for their funeral shop, a classic choice, naturally. But as it turned out, he wasn't planning on promoting the shop at all this time. He explained that his main goal for the day was to film a clarification video, a chance to set the record straight. The staff immediately began to speculate, wondering if he was about to address some scandalous exposure about his private life. Or perhaps, they joked, he was secretly married and had been caught flirting with other girls. Their theories grew even wilder, wondering if the boss had done something truly illicit. If that were the case, it would certainly be a major red flag for the business. As Li Tian listened to these wild theories, her mind began to race with all sorts of absurd possibilities. Her expression became increasingly bewildered as she tried to process the nonsense her colleagues were spewing. It seems that nowadays, these are the only things young women have on their minds, or so it appeared to her. She finally asked Tiango what exactly he needed to clarify to the public. She wondered if he had been caught violating some obscure regulation earlier that morning. But even then, she figured that would only warrant a small post on social media, not a full video. He simply told them to read the content he had already written and judge for themselves. This was the script for the video he intended to record, starting with a simple, "Hello everyone." He began the script by introducing himself as the owner of the Pinyin funeral shop. He noted that many false rumors about him had been circulating online recently, as is often the case these days. In reality, he explained, he was just an ordinary man running an honest business in the funeral industry. There was nothing truly supernatural about the strange events that had occurred previously. He argued that those people were simply involved in dangerous live streams or neglected their own health. He cited extreme high-altitude stunts as an example, adding that if anyone needed funeral services, They were welcome to contact him, as the Pinyin Funeral Shop offers 24-hour service. One of the staff suggested that he should enter a random live stream to test his theory. It was a clever move, really, the perfect way to finally lay everyone's lingering doubts to rest. They suggested picking someone at random from the mukbang eating section, a safe choice, surely. Thinking it would be harmless, we see him begin scrolling through the various eating channels. He found a stream where a man shouted to his viewers about a 44 yuan buffet. The streamer declared they were about to teach the restaurant owner a lesson by eating their fill. With a loud cheer of "Oligay," the two men on screen prepared to dive in. We see them devouring plate after plate of skewers, pork knuckles, seafood, and fatty beef. They were eating everything in sight, and soon, many of Tienga's own viewers noticed he had joined the stream. They immediately searched for the room and crowded in, and within 2.5 minutes, the number of online viewers had already reached 100,000. It was going viral. The streamers, oblivious to the reason for the surge, remarked how much everyone loved their lessons. They decided it was time to show their true skills and began swallowing massive amounts of food. They shouted about giving the owner a lesson he wouldn't forget, stuffing their faces with reckless abandon. With the viewer count climbing toward 1 million, they were determined to show this young restaurant owner who was boss. This was the level of fame they had always dreamed of, and we can see they were absolutely ecstatic. A moment later, the empty plates stacked in front of them were nearly as tall as the men themselves. Suddenly, the system flagged them as high-risk clients, prompting Tienga that he could now follow their account. He noted that the probability of a dangerous event was only 20%, a relatively low risk, all things considered. He figured there was no way someone would die with only a 20% chance, so he went ahead and followed them. But then his eyelid began to twitch, a bad omen, surely, while viewers joked that the last person only lasted 30 seconds. Some predicted these two wouldn't last 15 seconds, and as the countdown began, Tienga opened the comment section. He intended to warn them to look after their health, but he found the comments had already been completely overrun. The viewers were in a panic, asking why on earth the Pinyin Funeral Shop had just followed this channel. They wondered if Fat Bro was the next target of the funeral shop, unable to believe Tienga had actually clicked follow. People began advising the streamers to delete their accounts and run, claiming Tienga was a harbinger of bad luck. They mentioned his old nicknames, like Assistant to the King of Hell, leaving the streamers utterly confused by the chatter. The two men laughed it off, wondering what all this nonsense about a living llama was supposed to mean. They joked that their fans were being quite colorful today, just as the Pinyin Funeral Shop left a formal comment. Tienga advised them to control their diet, warning that long-term binge eating would eventually take a toll on their bodies. The streamers finally realized why so many people were watching, looking at the profile of their new follower. They realized they had attracted the attention of a funeral director, not exactly the kind of fan they were hoping for. They called it a stroke of bad luck and told him to get lost, but Tienga simply left them to their own fate. According to that one viewer whose predictions had been eerily accurate before, these two only had 8 seconds left. Now, we see there are only 7. 6 seconds, 5 seconds. Honestly, it all seemed a bit too dramatic for comfort. The chat had actually started a countdown, despite the previous incidents being mere accidents. At this point, Fat Bro stopped eating because reading these comments was simply too much. He found the whole thing hilarious, thinking to himself what a strange day this had become. 30 seconds had passed, and he mocked the Pinyin Funeral Shop directly. He asked where this living llama was, as the seconds continued to tick by harmlessly. The stream reached the 2.5-minute mark, and the streamers decided to address their audience. They told their viewers they would leave it there for today, thanking everyone before saying goodbye. They laughed at the idea of a living llama, telling their followers to stay strong and ignore the nonsense. They claimed that such titles were just personas created by people with hidden agendas. In their minds, it was all just a trick to build a brand and sell products, nothing more. Unfortunately for Tienga, it seemed he had finally hit a wall, as nothing had happened to them. One viewer asked the expert in the chat why his 15-second prediction had failed. The predictor was just as confused, noting that according to the previous patterns, it should have worked. The 15 seconds should have been up by now. He couldn't understand why his power had suddenly stopped working. We have to wonder, was it possible that everything before truly had been a coincidence? To be fair, the world is full of ridiculous accidents that defy any logical explanation. And just because something is absurd doesn't mean we can simply deny its existence. The chat was filled with people claiming they should have trusted science all along, as the world isn't actually full of supernatural events. It seemed they had finally gotten away with it, or so they thought. Deep down, many viewers wanted to believe that the world truly didn't hold that many eerie mysteries. The streamers urged everyone to trust their boss, describing him as just an honest man working in the funeral industry. And with that, they announced that their live stream for the day had come to an end. They added that if anyone had funeral needs, they were more than welcome to reach out for a consultation. They even offered a 50% discount for fans, just as a viewer mentioned their dog had passed away. The viewer asked if they could arrange a funeral for the pet, which triggered a sudden realization for the audience. They noticed that in all the previous cases, the shop had left a comment, but this time, there was no advertisement. Some began to wonder if those comments were actually a curse, the kind that makes someone vanish the moment it appears. The streamers confirmed they could handle a dog's funeral, while dismissing the idea that their ads were some kind of dark magic. They told the netizens they were going a bit too far, as the theories were becoming truly ridiculous. It was just a standard slogan for their shop, they claimed, a perfectly ordinary advertisement, though few seemed to believe them. The viewers then challenged the boss to post a comment right then and there to dispel everyone's lingering fears. Feeling he had no other choice, our protagonist finally sat down and edited a new comment. He wrote that this was the Pinyin funeral shop, and he strongly advised the two streamers to control their eating habits. He noted that long-term overeating is bad for one's health, adding that they were welcome to consult him for funeral services. He even mentioned that booking in advance would secure them a 50% discount. He never expected that just a second after he warned them to take care of their health in the comments, the man on screen would suddenly collapse. It made no sense. The system hadn't said a word. The system had clearly stated that the probability of death during their next dangerous livestream was only 20%. A 90% mortality rate was only expected over the long term, so it made no sense for him to collapse right after the warning. The chat exploded in terror, with viewers noting how chilling it was to see someone simply vanish from the frame like that. They demanded to know how this wasn't a curse, jokingly accusing the shop owner of hiding his true, dark powers. Then, a local from Chunjiang chimed in with a quiet reminder, asking if everyone had already forgotten the boss's name. His name is Zhang Lingtian, and in their dialect, Lingtian implies that anyone he follows or notices won't live to see tomorrow. As if on cue with those words, the stream suddenly became a sensation. A massive wave of people flooded into the room, and the number of concurrent viewers quickly soared to 200,000. Fatylong's follower count began to skyrocket as well, rapidly climbing towards 600,000 fans. To the audience, this wasn't just a coincidence anymore. That advertisement was clearly a death sentence in disguise. The sheer speed of it all was enough to make anyone's head spin. They felt they had been inches away from being fooled, while Tian and the assistant looked on in total shock. Their expressions were those of people who had been utterly betrayed, leaving our protagonist at a complete loss for words. Deep down, he was just as shaken and confused as they were, finding the entire situation completely surreal. He couldn't understand how the man could just collapse, especially since the system hadn't given him any warning at all. There had been no notification, no sound, nothing to indicate that a life was about to end. Back on screen, the streamers tried to play it off, laughing that Fatty Long was doing a great job of teasing the audience. They joked that the little brother from the Pinyin funeral shop had been scared into total silence by their little performance. After a quick exchange of looks, the two of them decided to seize the moment and milk this surge of traffic for all it was worth. And so, they decided to stage a little prank where Fatty Long would pretend to be dead. The plan was to let the Pinyin funeral shop brag and boast about their supposed curse. Then, they would strike back and expose the shop owner as a total fraud. A shame, really, that's such a big fish. Seemed to be genuinely confused and simply refused to take the bait. We have to admit, opportunities on the internet move like lightning. If you catch one, you soar. But if you hesitate for even a second, it's gone. The streamers wondered how they had suddenly become so popular. The viewers were just as confused, asking if it was all an act or if Fatty Long had actually passed away. It turns out he was just faking it, much to the disappointment of the more cynical viewers. Fatty Long reappeared on screen, laughing and shouting that he was doing just fine. He claimed he had simply been playing along with the theme of the stream. He then turned his attention back to our friend from the Pinyin funeral shop, mocking him by saying his powers weren't strong enough while laughing with a playful, smug expression. With their follower count exploding like never before, they felt this unexpected performance was a stroke of genius, though the audience felt a bit toyed with. To be honest, their methods for chasing clout were undeniably effective, even if they were playing with fire. The streamers told their fans not to get too worked up over the little scare. They explained that they and Fatty Long mainly wanted to teach everyone a very important lesson. In the 21st century, we must always put our faith in science and logic. They insisted that there is no such thing as a living king of hell in this world. They even poked fun at the younger fans who were so intimidated by the name Zhang Lingtian. After being followed, Yang Shou began a mocking countdown directed at Zhang Lingtian. "Don't you think it's hilarious?" he asked, adding that we shouldn't blame the younger fans for being scared. After all, everyone has been young and naive once, which, to be fair, is a valid point. They decided it was time to teach the shop owner another lesson, insisting it was absolutely necessary. Fatty Long then shouted for the waiter to bring out another 200 plates of crayfish and 50 pork hocks. Meanwhile, on the other side of the screen, Lingtian finally breathed a sigh of relief. He told his viewers that they must always believe in science and logic. In this world, there is no such thing as ghosts, gods, or a living king of hell. He pointed out how they had all been fooled, noting that if Fatty Long had actually died, that King of Hell title would have been welded to his head forever. The fans admitted they had been wrong. He went on to say that the most dangerous thing in this world isn't the supernatural. The most dangerous thing is still people. A viewer then joked about hiring him for a dog's funeral. Lingtian agreed, saying that a funeral for a pet was certainly something he could handle. Noticing the hour, he announced that it was getting late and the live stream would end there. He reminded everyone that if they had any funeral needs, they were welcome to consult him. He even offered a 50% discount for his followers. Quite the businessman, really. Back at the restaurant, Fatty Long complained that the food was actually terrible, but it was a buffet after all. One can't expect much quality, though he admitted the merchant was at least generous with the portions. His friend teased him for eating this junk day and night, asking what he was thinking. He wondered if Fatty Long was actually looking for something a bit more refined for a change. Fatty Long gave a grand wave of his hand and headed straight into the supermarket. Half an hour later, we see them inside a house where the table is overflowing with food, and the two of them begin eating again. As they ate, Fatty Long slowly leaned over the table, muttering that it was all just nonsense. He scoffed at the idea of being saved by Zhang Lingtian's follow, calling it a total betrayal of their boss. He then turned to his friend, asking why on earth he had changed his username to something so strange. His friend explained it was only because the boss had been so unlucky lately. He wanted to avoid being noticed. So, he had chosen a cute pet-themed name, noting that among the boss's followers, there were actually quite a few people using names just like that. He told the others not to follow blindly and to look at things from different angles. For instance, he believed that brother Tian was just like them, a perfectly normal human being. The only real difference, he joked, was that the man was slightly more handsome than he was. He suggested the boss follow them back later, as he had never been followed by a million-level streamer before. Fatty Long laughed, telling Awei that he had certainly changed. He couldn't believe his friend had actually learned how to suck up to the boss like that. Though, to be honest, he admitted that he wanted to follow back for himself as well. The boss agreed, promising that he would make sure to follow all of them back very soon. He mentioned Little Han as well, before turning his attention back to the boisterous Fatty Long. He praised the performance from earlier as truly perfect, noting they had gained nearly 100,000 followers. It was a complete success, and he urged the young man to get up and keep celebrating. They planned to drink until they dropped, already thinking about finding someone else to help them run their next act. He was certain it wouldn't be long before they succeeded, raising a glass to toast Fatty Long as well. With this momentum, becoming a top 10 food streamer and reaching 1 million followers was just a matter of time. But then, we see him pause, asking his friend what was wrong since he had just said he was still hungry. He wondered why the man was suddenly shutting down and going to sleep when they were supposed to be grilling more food. He urged Fatty Long to get up immediately, thinking it was just another one of his dramatic antics. Panic began to set in as he called out to Hang Long, desperately asking what was happening to him. It seemed that Fatty Long was no longer breathing, and his heart had completely stopped beating. In a frantic rush, he shouted for someone to call emergency services immediately. A little later at the hospital, he anxiously asked the doctor if his friend was going to be all right. The doctor simply told them to notify the family and begin preparing for the funeral arrangements. There was no longer any point in trying to resuscitate him. He was already gone. Meanwhile, we returned to the shop where an employee was telling the boss about the many manufacturers wanting to collaborate. Since their Pinyin funeral shop mostly dealt in funeral supplies anyway, it seemed like a natural fit. He suggested that selling their products through a live stream was a perfectly viable business move. The boss agreed, but suddenly, a system notification appeared. The client Fatty Long was officially gone. The atmosphere shifted instantly as the others asked Tian Tian what was wrong and why she looked so shocked. When she said Hang Long was dead, they told her not to make such a dark and heartless joke. They assumed it was just another one of his elaborate pranks designed to chase more viral traffic. But she insisted it was real, explaining that a former classmate had just called her with the news. Hang Long was truly gone, and her friend had been one of the medical staff who tried to save him. Earlier that day, Tian Tian had been complaining to this very classmate about how Fatty Long was using their boss to chase viral traffic. And yet, by that evening, she received the call that changed everything. It was truly surreal. The three of them felt a sudden chill, a creeping sensation as if they were in a horror movie with a ghost standing right behind them. We see them look back in a daze, still struggling to process the fact that Fatty Long had actually passed away. The cause of death was confirmed as complications from extreme overeating, and the system asked if they would handle the funeral. Taking the job would unlock system rewards, and since the hospital was right next door, it was practically on their doorstep. It was close enough, so the boss accepted the task, prompting a new notification from the system. The rewards would be issued once the funeral was successfully completed, a grim reminder of the consequences of Fatty Long's lifestyle. He remarked that this was exactly what happens when one pushes their body too far, and now the tragedy had finally struck. The employees agreed, noting he was always overindulging, but then they looked at their boss with a new kind of fear. One of them stammered that they needed to use the restroom, feeling a sudden, desperate urge to be anywhere else. It was terrifying to them. They felt as though they had narrowly escaped being the boss's next followed target. Another employee quickly made the same excuse, scurrying away to the bathroom to avoid the boss's gaze. The boss watched them go, wondering if all this drama was really necessary, but things were moving fast. Once again, the shop climbed to the top of the trending searches, and the online discussion groups were absolutely buzzing with activity. In an instant, the internet was flooded with rumors, as if everyone was determined to weld the title of Living King of Death to the boss's head. People claimed they had all been fooled, pointing out that once Zhang Lun was followed by him, his fate was sealed. It seemed he truly couldn't survive a single day, leading others to warn their friends to watch out if the boss entered their livestream. The advice was simple: shut down your account immediately because, at the end of the day, one's life is more important than followers. Just then, the phone rang. "Hello, Ping'an Funeral Shop. Are you looking to book a funeral service?" A voice on the other end chirped nervously. "Tian, brother Tian, it's me. It's Xiao Duan." Tian paused, wondering who this Xiao Duan could be, before remembering the streamer from earlier that evening. The caller clarified he was Fatty Duan, and Tian finally made the connection with a simple, "Oh, Fatty Duan." Straight to business. Our boss asked if he was looking to pre-order funeral services for himself. He even offered a 40% discount for group bookings, though Fatty Duan quickly insisted he wasn't that unlucky yet. Since Tian was already in the funeral business, the group had discussed it and reached a decision. They wanted to leave the arrangements for Fatty Long's final send-off entirely in his hands. Fatty Duan hoped that by hiring him for the funeral, they could spend more time together and build a rapport. Deep down, he was likely hoping to build enough goodwill to get his own name off the boss's death list. He stammered a confirmation, emphasizing that yes, this was strictly about organizing the funeral. Money was no object, so the boss agreed to head over the following day to finalize the details. Fatty Duan sounded relieved, eagerly promising that they would all be waiting to welcome Brother Tian's arrival. The boss began organizing the next day's schedule, deciding he and Xiaohan would head to Sinan City. Su Wei and Tian were left in charge of the shop, which they accepted without any hesitation whatsoever. At 9 o'clock the next morning, we see the boss and Xiaohan driving toward Fatty Long's home village. They were there to plan a special funeral, as the family wanted Fatty Long to leave this world with some dignity. As they traveled, Xiaohan looked like he was holding something back, prompting the boss to ask what was wrong. Xiaohan suggested the boss should probably stop doing live streams, mentioning that several people had reached out today. He asked if the boss had any idea what kind of business collaborations these people were actually proposing. Apparently, they wanted to pay the boss to go and follow various unfaithful men on social media. They were offering anywhere from 3,000 to 10,000 yuan just for a single follow. And if the target actually passed away, they'd add another 30 to 50,000, which is a bit much, really. Our boss simply sighed, insisting once again that all those previous incidents were merely accidents. He tried to sound convincing, though we can imagine how hard that was given his track record. He told Xiaohan that he wasn't nearly as eerie as people claimed, and that everything before was just a fluke. Xiaohan, however, wasn't buying it, telling the boss that trying to brainwash him wouldn't work. He admitted that even if he forced himself to believe the boss's excuses under pressure, the rest of the world certainly wasn't going to be so easily convinced. The boss changed tactics, asking Xiaohan when exactly he had started working at the Peace Funeral Shop. Xiaohan recalled starting as a part-timer for 2 years in college, followed by a year of full-time work. It had been about 3 years in total since he joined the business. The boss then asked if, in all those years, he had ever noticed anything truly wrong with him. He wondered if he ever seemed genuinely supernatural, feeling that even if others doubted him, his own assistant should know better. He felt the need to set the young man's thinking straight, and Xiaohan admitted he hadn't seen anything mystical. The boss nodded, arguing that if someone truly possessed dark arts, they couldn't possibly hide it for that long. Xiaohan hesitated, finding it difficult to argue with that particular bit of logic. The boss doubled down, claiming there was nothing creepy about him at all. He was just an ordinary man. He repeated it with conviction, as if saying it twice would make it twice as true. At most, he claimed, it was all just a series of unfortunate coincidences and bad luck. Just a bit of bad luck? Yes, that was his story, and he was sticking to it. He insisted it was all just a coincidence that Brother Yang met with such a sudden accident. It was also a coincidence that he followed the trained photographer on that specific day. As for the sky burial trekker, we all know how dangerous that is without being told. It was simply another fluke that the accident happened right after he hit the follow button. Regarding the little chef, her passing was clearly due to an irregular and unhealthy lifestyle. He just happened to be scrolling through his feed and followed her at that exact moment. And as for the buffet incident, well, that seemed to follow the same pattern as the others. They all had their own issues, but Xiaohan couldn't help but feel this was all a bit too convenient. He looked at his boss and asked him to be honest. Was that advertisement actually some kind of curse? He promised not to tell a soul, swearing that if he did, he'd become the shop's next customer. Xiaohan felt the boss had a point, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that the ad was a hidden spell. The boss scoffed, asking where he was getting his data and reminding him he was an accounting major. He pointed out that Xiaohan had forgotten about the little chef, whom he hadn't advertised to at all. And yet, she had collapsed anyway, which, to be fair, was a hard point to argue against. He reiterated that there truly hadn't been any advertising involved in that particular case. He told Xiaohan that he had simply been misled by the wild theories of people on the internet. If one actually took the time to think it through, it became clear these were all just tragic accidents. Xiaohan paused, starting to think that perhaps the boss was right after all. He admitted that it seemed he really had let himself be swayed by the online rumors. The boss nodded, satisfied that the young man finally understood the truth of the matter. Not long after, we find ourselves arriving at the village of Brother Pang in Southwest City. Kinga, you've finally arrived. Come, lunch has just been prepared for you. The man suggested they eat while they talked, keeping things moving along smoothly. He explained that he intended to hold a rather grand funeral for his son. After all, while he was alive, the boy had always been quite fond of a lively atmosphere. A grand ceremony? Of course, we can certainly do that if it's what you wish. Kinga even suggested they could craft a mysterious backstory for the late Mr. Pang Long. Confused, the man asked what a mysterious backstory actually entailed in this context. Kinga simply handed over a price list, inviting him to take a look for himself. The idea was to make the funeral guests suspect that the deceased had a dark, secret past. Looking at the options, the man joked that he almost wanted to book the highest standard for himself. Well, Mr. Pang, Kinga replied with a perfectly straight face. Should I go ahead and make a reservation for you right now? The man waved his hands frantically, insisting he was only joking, which, to be honest, was a wise move. He certainly wasn't in any hurry to invite that kind of bad luck upon himself just yet. Kinga moved on, asking which of the mysterious backstories they would like to select. He added that if those didn't satisfy them, they had plenty of other services available. For instance, they could hire a traditional band to play the Swona during the procession. The Swona performance came in various tiers, ranging from 2 players up to a full group of 8. In the end, the man decided that a mysterious past wasn't quite what they needed after all. He added that, besides, they didn't really follow those kinds of mysterious traditions anyway. After all, since the person was already gone, there was no point in putting on a show for anyone. However, he insisted on the Swona performance, deciding that 2 players would be just right. With that settled, they finalized and signed the funeral service agreement for Ping and Bereavement Shop. The man then told Boss Zhang that he would be leaving the rest of the arrangements in his capable hands. Once the date was officially set, we see them begin the process of customizing the funeral proceedings. Kinga thanked Zhao Dai before heading off to handle his own business, quickly answering a ringing phone. He professionally explained that they provided a full, one-stop service for all funeral-related matters. We offer full support for the first 6 minutes of the burn. If you aren't satisfied, you can simply place a new order. No need. Thank you, Kinga, the caller shouted, explaining he had a 60-year-old mother to care for. He went on about a wife he hadn't met yet and children who weren't even born. Clearly, he wasn't ready to leave this world quite so early. He begged for mercy, asking Kinga to be the bigger person and overlook his past mistakes. He admitted he was wrong for what happened in the livestream last night and regretted being so foolish. After witnessing the events of the previous night firsthand, he had undergone a complete awakening. To him, the man standing before us was nothing less than a living god of death. Kinga calmly asked if he would believe him if he said what happened to Pang Long was just an accident. An accident? Yes, of course. It was definitely an accident, the man agreed frantically. He then nervously asked if he would be okay, to which Kinga replied that it wasn't a big problem. However, he warned him to stop overeating, avoid excessive drinking, and start living a more disciplined life. He also advised him to stop filming those dangerous live streams, especially the ones involving binge eating. In fact, he suggested it would be far better to film a weight loss journey instead. Brothers, today, I am here with Tinga, the man announced to his audience. The comments flooded in, calling Tinga a living legend and asking if Pang Dun was crazy for tempting fate like this. Since he and Pang Long were such close friends, the livestream exploded in popularity following Pang Long's passing. The account became incredibly active, with people crowding into the stream, though he urged everyone to stay calm. He explained to the viewers that Tinga was actually there to preside over Pang Long's funeral. Deep down, he felt deeply moved by the words Tinga had shared with him earlier. He told the audience that the main reason for starting this stream was to make a major announcement. Since Brother Pang was no longer with them and the account was missing its partner, he decided that from this day forward, he would no longer be using this specific social media account for himself. Instead, he would hand it over to Pang Long's family without asking for a single cent in return. All future earnings would belong to them, a gesture that was, to be honest, quite unexpected. We see him voluntarily give up ownership of an account with 800,000 followers. That is no small fortune, leading fans to worry if Pang Dun was retiring from the industry entirely. He reassured them he wasn't leaving, noting that Tinga had just shown him a new path to survival. And that path, as it turned out, was to pivot his content toward weight loss live streams. Once Pang Long's affairs were settled, he planned to create a brand new account and start over. Finally, he turned to Tinga and asked if he would be willing to say a few words to the viewers. Tinga told him that with a body like his, he should have started losing weight long ago and needed to work hard. He encouraged him to slim down as soon as possible, admitting that he hadn't originally planned to speak at all. However, Pang Dun's selfless gesture had truly moved him, and just then, we see them arrive at the village entrance. As soon as he appeared, the door of a nearby vent slid open with surprising speed. We watch as a reporter named Jiren steps out with a camera and microphone, leaving everyone quite confused. She asked if he was Mr. Zhang from the Peace Funeral Shop, introducing themselves as staff from Chuanbei Focus TV. The reporter, Xiaomei, explained they were there to interview them about becoming a recent viral sensation. He politely told her they were quite busy and weren't accepting interviews at the moment. She persisted, asking for just a moment of his time to discuss what the internet was currently calling him. She wanted to know his thoughts on the Flame King title and if he actually possessed real magic. He simply looked at her and asked if she truly believed that magic existed in this world. She admitted she hadn't believed in it before, but since encountering him, her stance had shifted. Her resolve was wavering, especially since every person he followed seemed to meet with a sudden accident. He reminded her that as a member of the media, she should believe in science and oppose superstition. He insisted there was no such thing as a Flame King or magic in this world, which was a bold claim given the circumstances. He explained that the people he followed previously all had their own underlying issues, one way or another. She addressed him as Mr. Flame King again, noting that this was already the 5th incident they had tracked. She mentioned that while Chuanbei TV was a local station, it had a national reach, and she pressed him for a statement. She asked if he had anything to say to their viewers, to which he replied that everyone must simply believe in science. He maintained that these were all just accidents, repeating his mantra to trust in science and nothing more. He insisted that there are no ghosts or gods in this world and that it's all fake, every bit of it. A few sentences later, we see them in the interview on the pretext of being busy. Tinga, Pang Dun stammered, catching his breath. When asked what was wrong, he explained that Fai Long was his best partner and a true brother to him. He noted that the parents' financial situation was tight and they simply couldn't afford a proper send-off. So, he asked Tinga to upgrade the service to the 8 Swanum Mystery Funeral Package. He requested 10 luxury cars and 30 men in black suits to join the procession. They were to carry black umbrellas to add a certain gravity to the atmosphere. After streaming for so long, he had saved some money. He wanted to spend it now as a final farewell to his brother, hoping he would have a smooth journey to the afterlife. He also wanted the fellow villagers to see that Fai Long had actually made something of himself out in the world. Tinga agreed, without hesitation. Sure, no problem, he replied, moved by the gesture. Thank you, Tinga, Pang Dun said. I wish you nothing but the best of luck while you're here in the mortal realm. Tinga paused, wondering what he meant by in the mortal realm, as if he had any other place to go, really. Suddenly, he noticed something else. Wait, Xiaohan, why are you crying? He asked his assistant. We see his young assistant in the passenger seat, tears dripping steadily down her face. At that moment, Tinga was utterly bewildered. To be honest, he had no idea what was happening. She looked at him and asked if she was the kind of person who was incredibly foolish. The kind of person, she wondered, who would be sold off and still help the buyer count the money. He asked why she would say that. It seems his decision to stay single was wise, as he couldn't follow her train of thought at all. For instance, in this exact moment, he had absolutely no clue why she was weeping. She sobbed that she must have been sold by her boss, feeling as though she had been terribly deceived. She couldn't believe she had actually fallen for her boss's nonsense. All that talk about believing in science and claiming everything was just an accident. What kind of accident happens 5 times in a row? Tinga looked into Xiaohan's tearful eyes, honestly having no idea how to explain it. After all, in his mind, it really was just a series of accidents. He jokingly suggested giving her account a follow, noting her new handle was Little White Goose. A day later, the funeral began with the Swana horns blasting toward the sky and men in black holding umbrellas. It looked less like a simple farewell and more like the funeral of a powerful underworld boss. Many of the onlookers were utterly stunned by the mysterious and overwhelming atmosphere of the ceremony. The event was so striking, in fact, that it even made the local evening news. The neighbors whispered among themselves, wondering what on earth Pang Long had actually been doing for a living. Judging by this display, he was clearly no ordinary person. With the first funeral complete, a notification appeared. The system prompted him to collect his rewards, and the task completion bonuses were promptly issued. He was congratulated on unlocking the personnel classification rating feature, which doubled his funeral fees. The system clarified that all monetary rewards provided were already calculated after taxes. Double rewards after taxes? Now, that was a development he could certainly get behind. After Pang Long's funeral concluded, the total fees collected amounted to 50,000 yuan. After expenses, he netted 20,000, but with the system's double bonus, he received another 50,000. This meant he had earned 70,000 yuan from a single job. The system then urged him to open his video app. It was time to test the new scanning feature on a user named Wu Ling Mengya, twin sisters. The scan showed the elder sister's next danger probability was a mere 0.1%. The younger sister's probability of facing danger was also a mere 0.1%. Since these were low-risk clients, the system categorized them as contribution clients and issued a prompt. It informed him that, as the host, he could decide for himself whether or not to follow them. It seemed the system's scanning was evolving from broad strokes into something far more precise. Take the beautiful photo sisters from before, he could follow the company's usual booking procedures. Back then, the system couldn't quite pinpoint exactly which individual faced a higher risk. Instead, it had simply provided a collective danger probability of 80% for the pair. We see the staff checking the numbers, noting the company account would likely hit 1.5 million followers today. One employee excitedly told the boss that if they reached that milestone, it would finally be time to renegotiate their sales commissions. Recently, several manufacturers had reached out for collaborations, including a brand that specialized in urns. When asked if he wanted to promote the product, he simply told them to arrange it. Good grief. At this rate, he'd be selling urns he might eventually need himself. Soon, a visitor arrived at the office. The staff introduced the guest as Chu Jiangmei, the general manager of the urn brand. She greeted him warmly, saying she was delighted to finally meet the famous Mr. Zhang in person. She mentioned that the internet was already calling him a living god of death, a charming title, truly. She joked that she hoped this god of death could bring their company a bit of good luck this time. Her goal was simple. She wanted their auspicious cloud urns to see a massive explosion in sales. Zhang noted that he was just a small-time streamer doing his first promotion, but he promised to try his best. Jiangmei insisted that while it was his first time, his current popularity rivaled that of the biggest stars. She pointed out that he had practically been living on the trending search lists for the past few days. And besides his remarkably good looks, Zhang appeared to be quite a humble man. He wondered if he really seemed like such an ordinary person to others. He couldn't quite understand how the internet, based on just a few isolated incidents, had managed to label him the living god of death. But such is the nature of the internet age. It was perfectly normal, after all. Jiangmei then introduced a young woman named Jian Cici. She was the company's professional sales streamer, assigned to co-host the broadcast with him today. Cici told boss Zhang to just call her by her first name and wished for a pleasant collaboration. She suggested he have his people start bringing the merchandise in so they could begin. We see the unloading process begin immediately. It was a rather somber inventory, to say the least. Boxes of all styles were carried in, from delicate porcelain to heavy, dark ebony containers. There were even ornate dragon-patterned yellow pearwood boxes. Soon, the live stream officially started. Zhang Lingtian greeted the audience, welcoming them to the peaceful Whitestone shop stream. Cici introduced herself as well, smiling brightly for the camera. She expressed how happy she was to be there representing the brand as their guest host. She joked about joining the living god of death in his very own digital lair. She even teased that she hoped the god of death wouldn't decide to take her away today. The comments flooded in, noting that making an honest living wasn't shameful, though they had questions. Viewers jokingly asked if they might get randomly followed during the stream, feeling a bit nervous. They marveled at the brand's boldness. Hiring the god of death to sell urns was certainly a choice. Some viewers commented that just entering the stream made them feel a strange, sudden chill creeping down their spines. They asked what products Tienga had brought today, surprised to see such a beautiful young lady representing the brand. One fan joked that while he didn't know if Tienga would take him away, the hostess had certainly stolen his heart. In less than 2.5 minutes, the digital room was already buzzing with activity. Over 2,000 people had arrived, pushing the stream's popularity score to over 200,000, a staggering start, really. Cici laughed it off, telling everyone that taking people away was impossible and that the Living Yama title was just a joke. Getting down to business, she announced that the first product they were bringing to the audience today was a timeless classic, a solid ebony container. It was quite a sight to behold. One viewer remarked on the absurdity of the situation, watching a sales pitch for burial boxes first thing in the morning. Others joked that while most streamers want your money, Tienga seemed to be after your very soul. One man even claimed his girlfriend had just slapped him, demanding to know why he was shopping for funeral urns. He asked the chat how to explain he wasn't wishing for her demise. To be honest, having a girlfriend at all was the real surprise there. The chat teased that boss Zhang himself had been single for 28 years and didn't even have a girlfriend yet. Zhang Lingtian looked at the screen, wondering who exactly had been broadcasting his 28 years of bachelorhood to the entire world. As the netizens saw the box being presented, a collective hush fell over the chat. Imagine the scene, a luxury item for the final journey. Cici explained that this particular model featured the most exquisite relief carving craftsmanship available. Crafted from precious wood, she told them not to worry about whether they would use it right away. She argued that the piece held immense value as a collectible item in its own right. After all, she noted, life only happens once. For the price of 19,999 yuan. Buying it now as a small investment for the future wasn't such a bad idea, or so she claimed. 19,999 yuan. To be honest, that price seemed a bit steep for most viewers. Since it was their first live stream, she suggested they should give the fans a special benefit, but Zhang Lingtian immediately refused. He told her that such a discount was impossible, as it wouldn't even cover their basic labor costs. But Cici wasn't stopping there. She turned back to the camera, announcing that for today only, she would secure a massive deal for everyone in the room. She asked the chat if they wanted it for 15,999 instead of the original price. Then she pushed further, asking if 11,999 was the magic number. She wanted to hear from them. Finally, she set the price for the day at just 9,999 yuan. At less than 10,000 apiece, she invited everyone to take a closer look at the craftsmanship. After showcasing the quality one last time, she began the countdown to launch the purchase link. 3, 2, 1. She told the brothers in the chat to grab them while they could as the stream continued in high spirits. It was all a carefully rehearsed script, of course. He and Cece played their parts perfectly while the brand representative, Miss Chu, joined in occasionally. She would protest the price cuts until the stream ended at noon. By then, they had sold nearly 200 units, a successful morning by any measure. Miss Chu thanked Zhang Lingtian for his hard work, noting the office was a bit cramped and suggesting he expand if he planned to keep streaming. He agreed that once these orders were processed, he would look into a larger space. And then, his system scanner activated once more. The target was the host, Jian Cece. A danger warning appeared, citing a long-term history of promoting improper values. The system noted she had engaged in multiple dangerous behaviors in the past, and her next action involved a risky pursuit of beauty. He realized they needed to handle this situation carefully, as the warnings from the system began to repeat with increasing urgency. The interface flickered, emphasizing her skewed values and the risks she was taking to maintain her appearance. Given her history of reckless behavior, the system calculated the probability of a dangerous incident occurring next at a staggering 99%. The system labeled her a precise potential client. As he glanced at the playback on the recording equipment, he knew he had to pay attention. We see that for this precise potential client, the line between selling urns and needing one himself was becoming dangerously thin for Boss Zhang. Cece wondered why he was staring at her like that. Perhaps the boss, single for 28 years, had finally met his match. Working in the funeral industry meant he rarely met many girls, so being captivated by a vibrant young streamer was perfectly normal. But the system's warning was clear. Improper values and a history of dangerous behavior meant a 99% chance of a beauty-related disaster. He wondered if this beauty-related accident would involve her boyfriend or some other unexpected person or event. Zhang Lingtian decided to be direct, asking Miss Cece if she was currently in a relationship. She laughed, noting how straightforward he was, and admitted she found it hard to believe the rumors that he didn't have a girlfriend. She repeated her disbelief several times, clearly amused by the sudden turn the conversation had taken. To be honest, she seemed quite taken aback by his bluntness, as she continued to express her skepticism about his dating life. She told Zhang Lingtian that he was surprisingly direct, especially since everyone claimed he was single. She reiterated that she found his lack of a partner hard to believe, given his charm and success. Then, she decided to formally introduce herself to him, laying all her cards on the table. She explained that her name was Jian Cece. She was 24 years old, a college graduate, and stood 172 centimeters tall. She added that she weighed 98 pounds, and, most importantly, she didn't have a boyfriend at the moment. She told herself that even though he ran a funeral shop, he did have over 1 million followers. Compared to her own 40,000 followers, his reach was impressive, and she couldn't help but notice he was quite handsome. She felt that if he were willing, it might actually be worth trying to get to know him better. Just then, Miss Chu chimed in, joking that Mr. Zhang was already trying to steal away their best streamer from the sales department. They had only just met, yet it seemed Cece was already being charmed away right in front of everyone. Miss Chu remarked they made a handsome couple, but Zhang Lingtian simply noted that since Cece was single, things were about to get complicated. Zhang Lingtian continued his inquiry, asking if Cece had any particularly enthusiastic fans, or perhaps a wealthy top brother supporting her stream. He warned her that if she did have such fans, she should definitely avoid meeting them in person, especially since she was single. Since there was no boyfriend in the picture, he reasoned the danger wouldn't come from a lover, so perhaps it was one of those obsessed top donors. Cece laughed, admitting she wished she had a wealthy benefactor like that, but unfortunately, no one had taken that much interest in her yet. As for meeting fans, she insisted it was out of the question, while Miss Chu added that the streamers under their brand were all sensible girls. Miss Chu assured him they didn't hire anyone scandalous, though she secretly thought his blunt way of speaking was quite something to behold. She figured he might stay single forever at this rate, while Zhang Lingtian wondered what details he was still missing about the system's warning. He puzzled over the mention of improper values and what exactly that could be referring to in Cece's specific case. Miss Chu watched him curiously, wondering if Mr. Zhang had some very particular tastes that they weren't aware of yet. She speculated whether he perhaps disliked the sweet type and preferred someone a bit more wild and uninhibited. While they were lost in thought, Zhang Lingtian turned back to Cece with a look of absolute seriousness. He offered her a very sincere piece of advice, asking if she had a habit of undergoing plastic surgery or cosmetic procedures. He suggested that from now on, she should probably avoid those kinds of enhancements entirely. Even without a jealous boyfriend or a stalker fan, he warned her that one small mistake in that area could still be life-threatening. The danger was real, as he explained that the current trend of blind, excessive plastic surgery was actually quite perilous. In his view, and the system's, this obsession with artificial beauty was exactly the kind of improper value that led to disaster. Cece was momentarily stunned, asking him to take a good, hard look at her face before making such assumptions. She challenged him to check her nose or her chin to see if anything about her looked even remotely artificial. She was quite indignant, practically daring him to find any evidence that she had ever gone under the knife. Miss Chu couldn't help but chuckle, noting that they weren't even a couple yet, and Zhang Lingtian was already failing at the art of romance. Miss Chu couldn't help but sigh, addressing Zhang Lingtian while Cece looked on in disbelief. She jokingly asked if he had a personal grudge against the poor girl, noting that while asking about a boyfriend was normal enough, questioning her about wealthy donors or whether she went out with them in private was crossing a line. To be honest, those questions were quite cutting, especially when he topped it all off by bringing up plastic surgery. Ling Tian simply sighed to himself, thinking that good advice is often wasted on those who won't listen. He realized that even mercy cannot save those who refuse to see, so he quietly opened the link to Cece's account. We see him navigate to Jin Cece's profile and silently hit the follow button, much to Miss Chu's confusion. When she questioned his motives, he simply told her it was nothing, just a quiet way of keeping watch over someone. He then asked her to brew him a cup of tea, feeling that he had already said everything he possibly could. He could only hope she would take his words to heart, while Miss Chu tried to smooth things over with Cece. She insisted that Ling Tian was just socially awkward and actually cared quite a bit as they moved toward a motorhome parked outside. This was the place where Chu Jiaomei and Jian Cece usually had their lunch and rested between shoots. Jiaomei took on a motherly tone, trying to persuade her friend, but Cece wasn't having any of it. Cece argued that the man clearly had something wrong with his head, and she wasn't being particularly quiet about it. She felt his words implied she was a woman of questionable character, but what offended her even more was the fact that he actually suspected her of having plastic surgery, which she found absolutely insulting. Jiaomei told her to take the long view, suggesting that perhaps the man was just a bit of a perfectionist or eccentric. It was hard to say for sure, but she urged Cece to look at the results of their collaboration today. The sales performance had been excellent, and considering how many followers his account had, there was a huge opportunity. She even suggested that if Cece could spark a little bit of a romantic rumor with him, it would do wonders for her career. Jiaomei suggested that by riding the coattails of his popular account, Cece could finally make a real fortune. The prospect of a massive payday made Cece pause, realizing that her friend actually had a very good point. Jiaomei continued, explaining that if she wanted a long and successful career, talent alone wouldn't be enough. We see her emphasizing that in this industry, one needs a solid stepping stone to reach the next level. Cece nodded, calling her President Chu, but Jiaomei quickly told her there was no need to be so formal. She insisted Cece just call her Sister Chu, pointing out that her follower count was already spiking after his follow. It was true. The moment Ling Tian hit that button, the digital tide began to turn in Cece's favor. She asked Cece to look for herself, noting how many new fans had flooded in within just a few minutes. Jiaomei promised that their company would put its full weight behind her to keep this momentum going. After all, they were a major player in the industry with plenty of resources at their disposal. They were currently looking to build a new elite group of top-tier live streamers, and Cece thanked her warmly. A little later, Jiaomei returned to Ling Tian, teasing him that his recent actions weren't exactly fair play. She joked about him secretly following Cece, suggesting he could have just asked for her WeChat instead. Ling Tian's assistant was shocked, nearly shouting in disbelief that the boss had actually followed her. Jiaomei laughed, saying she was almost jealous that the brand owner was getting all the attention. Ling Tian looked up calmly and asked if she wanted him to give her account a follow as well. Jiaomei enthusiastically agreed, saying her company, Shangyun Urns and Coffins, definitely wanted to join his circle. She joked that they were eager to hold onto the coattails of his famous, peaceful cemetery shop account. The assistant watched this exchange in silence, baffled that anyone could be so happy about a follow from their boss. It seemed they had completely forgotten the dark legends surrounding his account, which, to be honest, was a dangerous oversight. Ling Tian looked at them, wondering why they all had such strange expressions on their faces. Wait, hasn't Ling Tian followed you yet, Sister Cece? Jiaomei asked with a playful tilt of her head. The assistant was baffled, asking how she could be so happy about a follow when she knew the boss's curse. Cece just laughed it off, insisting those stories were nothing more than internet rumors and wild exaggerations. She pointed out that as his employees, they should have more faith in their boss, and she had a point. To her, aside from being exceptionally handsome, Ling Tian seemed like a perfectly ordinary man. She simply didn't believe the stories online were as ridiculous as people claimed they were. We see Cece's tone becoming much warmer as she answered with a bright, cheerful smile on her face. The afternoon livestream began shortly after, drawing in a crowd twice as large as the morning session. Though the high prices meant only 100 items sold, it had already far exceeded their initial expectations. Jiaomei invited Ling Tian to dinner, but he declined, saying he was too tired and would join another time. The assistant couldn't believe it. Their boss was actually turning down an invitation from such a beautiful woman. She wondered if he was still upset about what happened at noon, though he didn't seem the type to brood. President Su admitted she had almost forgotten that, agreeing that Ling Tian deserved some rest after a long day. She suggested finding another time to meet tomorrow, and Ling Tian calmly agreed to reschedule for another day. But then, in a sudden change of heart, he seemed to reconsider his plans for the evening. He decided they should meet tonight after all, but first, he turned his attention toward Miss Cece. He told her to remember his words. Whatever she did, she must never go out with her top-tier fans. He warned her not to meet strangers from the internet or undergo plastic surgery. Under no circumstances should she go. One might think his social IQ was zero, but Cece simply thanked him, unaware of the weight behind his warning. Cece muttered to herself that Ling Tian must be a complete idiot for telling her to reschedule for tomorrow. She wondered if she really looked like the kind of woman who would run off with top fans or get plastic surgery. But then, Jiaomei chimed in, telling Cece that if she were in her shoes, she would actually be quite happy. Cece was skeptical, asking why on earth she should be happy about such a strange lecture. Jiaomei insisted that she had found a real treasure without even realizing it. Cece couldn't see how that was possible, but Jiaomei was absolutely certain of her theory. She pointed out that the fact he repeatedly warned her against those things was a very specific sign. To her, it proved that Ling Tian was the kind of man who possessed a certain moral purity. And naturally, a man with that kind of integrity wouldn't be the type to go out and mess around. She even hinted that he might still be completely inexperienced in matters of the heart. We have to admit, Jiaomei certainly has the silver tongue of a true leader, which is quite impressive. With just a few words, she not only calmed Cece's anger, but actually made her start to reconsider everything. Jiaomei urged her to think about it. If he didn't have feelings for her, why would he care so much? Why would he go out of his way to give her the same warning over and over again? The reason was obvious to her. He clearly didn't want to see Cece get hurt. Cece began to wonder if it was true. If he didn't like her, why would he say such things? Jiaomei then asked her to be honest and tell her the truth about her personal life. She wanted to know if Cece had ever actually met a fan in person or gone out with a top donor. Cece laughed, asking where she would even find such a high-spending top brother fan in the first place. She revealed that the highest total donation on her entire account was only 15,000, hardly a fortune. Jiaomei pointed out that this was exactly the kind of woman Ling Tian would like. As for plastic surgery, she could see that Cece was almost entirely natural. This made her the perfect match for a man who, quite clearly, possessed such moral standards. Creating a little bit of a scandal between them shouldn't be a problem at all. At that moment, Jiaomei was already mentally drafting the perfect clickbait headline. Something like, shocking, the king of living spirits with a 5-kill streak. While selling Shunyun earns, he actually takes the female streamer away. She was certain that a title like that would attract an incredible amount of traffic, and when people clicked, they'd realize taking her away simply meant they were dating. She could already imagine the priceless expressions on the netizens' faces. It might even be enough to land them on the trending search lists. By then, the Shunyun brand would be famous, and everyone would know Cece was natural. Cece laughed, telling Sister Chu to feel for herself that everything was original. Jiaomei nodded, deciding that since there were no scandals, they were ready. She told Cece to find some time tomorrow to invite him out for a meal. Meanwhile, she would have the company's operations team start working their magic. They would hype the situation up, and she would personally set the meeting for tomorrow night. With the plan set, she told Cece to go home and get some rest before saying goodbye. Cece walked into her residential complex, heading toward the small apartment she rented alone. Suddenly, she saw a comment. The King of Fire followed you? Sister, delete your account and run. The comments were frantic, asking if she hadn't just finished a live stream with the King of Fire. They begged her to apologize, wondering what on earth she could have done to offend him so deeply. Some suggested she ask him to unfollow her, though they doubted if that would even help at this point. One user even insisted that Cece should delete her entire account immediately, without waiting a single second. To be honest, she felt Ling Tian was just an ordinary person, and there was no reason for everyone to be so nervous. But the fans were convinced a disaster was coming, shouting for Cece to deactivate her profile before it was too late. While her fan group was absolutely exploding with chaos, she considered just moving her supporters to a backup account. She ignored the digital noise, checking herself in the mirror one last time before stepping onto the electronic scale. The display read 99 pounds, yet Cece pinched the skin on her thigh with a frown of disapproval. After a small sigh of dissatisfaction, we see her rising early the next morning to visit a local hospital. The doctor confirmed her identity, Cece, and began explaining their hospital's latest advanced surgical technology. It was a soft liposuction technique designed to precisely avoid blood vessels and nerves, or so they claimed. The procedure promised minimal bleeding and a recovery so fast she could be walking again by the end of the day. It would offer an immediate slimming effect, but Cece just reminded them she was a regular customer who knew the drill. She urged the doctor to start quickly, as she had very important plans for that evening.